So, quite a day. I mean, I've never seen my audience quite so excited as this since Boris Johnson won the election in 2019.
Yeah, everyone seems quite pleased this morning. I imagine, Brits are not overwhelmingly disposed to Donald Trump, I think, so there will be people in the wider country who aren't quite so pleased about it. But I think the challenge now is for Keir Starmer and David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, to really knuckle down and develop the relationship that they've begun to try and create with the Trump team.
Yeah, well, certainly David Lammy has tweeted his congratulations to Donald Trump. Hasn't made any mention of any previous encounters he may have had with him. We look forward to working with you and J.D. Vance in the years ahead. We know that Keir Starmer spent some time with Trump recently. They supposedly had a chicken dinner together in Trump Tower. But as somebody said to me, you can't really imagine them being very friendly towards each other. They're completely different individuals. You know, Starmer's this kind of robotic character. Basically Trump lives sort of on the edge, doesn't he? He's basically a man who is guided very much by his emotions.
Yeah, but I suppose if you said, what does a mostly New York, Florida-based, millionaire celebrity businessman have in common with the Rust Belt of America 8-10 years ago, people would have said he had nothing in common with them. So Trump is a relationship builder. He's very good at that. And I think he probably can be quite fickle, but by all accounts, the dinner that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary had with Trump and his team went very well. All sides seemed to say that there were, positive noises from Trump and Starmer and Lammy. So yeah. I think, they have to be professional about this, and whatever personal views David Lammy may have had about Donald Trump in the past, he's Foreign Secretary now. Right. He's going to put that to one side and he's going to do his job.
And personally speaking, I mean, I know that Donald Trump is a relatively forgiving guy as well. I mean, when he was asked about David Lammy, when Lammy and Starmer were in America to go and see Joe Biden, he was actually very gracious about him, and he didn't take the opportunity to give him a kicking at all. And he just was generally quite neutral about it and was quite pleasant about it. But, there is a problem, I think, between some of the policies that Donald Trump might now want to pursue and the way that Labour is governing this country.
Well, absolutely. And I think, given that Donald Trump has talked about 10-20% tariffs on imports that America makes from across the board, it's not a thing that's focused on Britain. He's talked about adding these tariffs to all exports. Imports to America. That's a real problem, and that's something that's one of the reasons that Keir Starmer and David Lammy have had to, develop such a strong relationship with the Trump team, because we exported in the last year or so about 188 billion pounds worth of goods to America, and that doesn't include services or anything like that, just goods. Yeah. So,
well, this is one of the things that people don't often mention, is it? That, the biggest export arena for us is the United States of America. It was never the EU. During the Brexit sort of years, and people would argue that why would we give up on the biggest market that's right on our doorstep? Well, because it's not the biggest market, whether it's right on our doorstep or not. America is.
Yeah, and you would want to diversify the markets that you have. If you were only exporting to one place and there was a problem, say tariffs, it would be a significant problem. But given the volume of exports to America, they are such a big trading partner for British business, any sort of tariffs are going to be a big problem. Now, there are people who think that Trump is talking about tariffs as a ploy to get good deals and to get other countries to drop their tariffs on American goods. But there are others who think, no, he is more of a protectionist mindset. There are a lot of different advisors around Trump. Some are very free market, some are very protectionist. So I think it'll be important to see over, the coming months and once he is in the White House, who he appoints to senior positions, because that will give us a better indication of what the sort of trade route is going to be over the next 4 years.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, one of the things that he's spoken about in the past is the car business, because obviously America is massively into cars. They're still probably the country that uses cars mostly, more than any other place in the world, because people drive everywhere they go. And he's basically aiming a lot of this stuff at China, isn't he? Because they were talking about building car factories in Mexico and then flooding sort of America with cheap Chinese cars. And he's saying, no, you can't do that. But if you want to build the plant in America, you can sell them to us all you want.
Well, and this is something that, when Joe Biden replaced Donald Trump in the White House, this is something the Biden administration kept up, quite high tariffs on Chinese, specifically electric vehicles, which really would have flooded the American market. So this is something that actually doesn't change, particularly with Trump being back in the White House. But the tariffs he has talked about on China are not the 10-20% he's talking about for the rest of the world. He's talking about 60% and above. He is really using trade policy as a tool of geopolitics.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so, as far as the reaction from the rest of the world is concerned, you know, we've got a lot of people, you know, in this country, for example, you know, Ed Davey yesterday saying he was hoping and praying for a Kamala Harris victory. We had William Hague talking about how Trump was a danger to the world. You know, people using really, really quite dangerous rhetoric about him, calling him a fascist, calling him Hitler, and all the rest of it. You know, they're all going to have to pipe down now. I don't know what Kamala Harris's, you know, concession speech is going to sound like, but I imagine she's going to be doing it through gritted teeth.
Well, and that's politics. You know, I imagine she'll make a very... it's dangerous to make predictions even a couple of hours advancing what she might say. I imagine she'll make a very gracious speech. In the end of the day, if you are a leader on the political stage, most of the time you just have to suck it up and get on with who the other countries have put in power. You know, lots of people in Britain, whether they are senior politicians or just members of the public, will have very strong views as to whether they would have preferred Trump or Harris. But at the end of the day, the British government, it's looking like we'll have to deal with a Trump administration for 4 years. And they're just going to get on with the job because that's what they have to do.
Yeah, exactly right. And they'll have to do it through gritted teeth as well. Emma, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Emma Revell, External Affairs Director at the Centre for Policy Studies. One from Paul who says, morning, Mike. First time in months I've felt positivity. Just a quick thought. I think Biden is a bit more lucid than first thought. I think he called Trump voters garbage because it was elbowed aside by Harris and he knew they were onto a lower. So he thought, if I'm not going to be president, neither are you. I think that was a nail in the coffin for the Democrats. Well, interesting conspiracy theory, that. I'm not sure if Joe Biden is as compos mentis as people think he is, but he probably has his lucid moments. And maybe he did take offence because he's being painted right now as a man who's been kind of abandoned by his party, abandoned by his vice president, abandoned by the campaign team around Kamala Harris, and a man who just goes to bed and spends an awful lot of time on his own. Even his wife, Jill, who wanted him to continue to stay as president and who wanted him to run for another 4 years, let's not forget, is supposed to be pretty unhappy with him. So maybe you're right. Maybe Biden did decide to pull one out and say to her, actually, I don't really fancy having you as my successor, so I'm going to kibosh your campaign by calling all of Trump's supporters garbage, because it certainly worked in his favour. Did it not? 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. It is a glorious morning. Donald Trump has won.